The Rangers kept on making moves this week, signing Shawn Armstrong to fill out the middle of their bullpen. Now, what all's left for the Rangers to do this winter? And what the heck is the latest with Roki Sasaki? We're going to talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. And before we get into today's show, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, Chris Young has been incredibly active this winter and this week, specifically signing Shawn Armstrong, the right-handed relief pitcher, formerly of the Cubs, formerly of the Rays, to a 1-year, $1.25 million deal. And of course, he did this right in the middle of me recording my last episode, and of course, I didn't see it until after I had already pressed publish and scheduled everything out for that show. So you'll have to wait a little bit longer than you expected to hear my thoughts on Shawn Armstrong, who fills out the middle of this bullpen pretty nicely. I think this is a solid pickup, not too expensive of a pickup. This is exactly the kind of bullpen signing that I like for the Rangers, or for really any team. I think that the best bullpen signings, usually the best strategy of building a bullpen via free agency, if you have to build it mostly through free agency. Obviously, it would be ideal to just home grow 1,000 different really, really good relievers and be able to just do that and have them all on the cheap and then trade them away when they get too expensive for prospects that end up working out as not relievers, great players. But if you got to build it through free agency, the scattershot approach seems to work pretty well and has for the Rangers for, well, at least last year. Going with an under market signing Kirby Yates, getting incredible value out of Kirby Yates. They did spend top dollar on David Robertson. That ended up working out very, very well for them also. But just going and signing a bunch of 1 or 2 top end guys for big money, I feel like usually doesn't work out, because relievers are so finicky, because they are so hard to predict if they're going to have good seasons or bad seasons. And Shawn Armstrong is not coming off of a good season. This was a rough year, spending time with 3 different teams, starting the year with Tampa Bay, then was sent over to the St. Louis Cardinals in the Dylan Carlson trade. Then he was released and claimed by the Cubs. Did not do well for the Cubs. Just overall, not a great year for Armstrong. But that means that he was cheap. Very cheap, actually. Only $1.25 million, the same amount that Jacob Webb is making this year, coming off of a season where he pitched in 57 games, 66 strikeouts, and 66 2/3 innings, an ERA north of 4.5. But the year before, 2023, this is the kind of year the Rangers are hoping they can get out of Shawn Armstrong. He pitched for the Tampa Bay Rays in 2023, 39 games, 52 innings, 54 strikeouts, a 1.38 ERA. That's kind of what the Rangers are hoping for. Maybe not exactly that, but maybe somewhere in between the 4.5-ish, 4.86 ERA in 2024 and the 1.38 ERA in 2023. Split the difference there. That's about a 3-ish ERA reliever, a guy who strikes out about a batter per inning, can go multiple different innings. This year, the big story for Shawn Armstrong is that he was absolutely lit up by lefties, just obliterated by left-handed bats, where the year before, he was much better against lefties, actually about equally as good against righties and lefties. I think part of the reason for that is that he literally does not have an off-speed pitch, doesn't throw a changeup, just primarily cutter, sinker, four-seamer, and also a slider. This year, he added a sweeper that wasn't quite as effective as he might have hoped, but this is kind of the deal with relievers. Go get a bunch of them, throw them in the middle of your bullpen. Maybe one or two of them end up being amazing. Maybe one or two of them end up being not so great, but you have a bunch of options so that if one of them gets hurt or is ineffective or whatever, you can have some other guys step up and you're not relying on just one or two guys, where if one of those guys, if you say you go with spending, $3 million on 7 relievers, that's $21 million, versus spending, $10 million each on 2 different relievers, $20 million. You spend one more, but you get a whole bunch of different guys with that other approach, where if one of those 7 guys, 2 of those 7 guys, heck, even if 3 of those 7 guys don't work out, you still got 4 pretty decent guys. And maybe one of them has an absolutely incredible season, and there's your closer out of nowhere. Whereas if you sign 2 guys for about $10 million a pop, then if one of those guys goes kaplooey, you're really in deep water. And the Rangers needed a lot of guys for this bullpen. Now, the way it stands, Fangraphs Roster Resource has the Rangers splitting closer duties between Jacob Webb and Robert Garcia. I think if the season started today, Robert Garcia would absolutely be the closer, but the Rangers do not start their season today, thankfully. There will be some other things that happen in this offseason, but you look at the middle of this bullpen, where before the season, you had some Walter Pennington, you had some Matt Festa, you had Daniel Robert, which are fine if those are your guys that are coming up, as depth options if a couple of guys get hurt, or if you have a long stretch where, you're throwing your bullpen a whole lot because your starters haven't given you length and you're on a long road trip and you're on a, 3-week stretch where you don't have an off day. Those guys are fine in those kinds of roles. But if those are your 6th, 7th, or Lord forbid 8th inning guys, that's not a winning bullpen. Probably. Again, relievers are finicky and maybe those guys end up having amazing seasons, and I look a little foolish in saying that, but right now, those are not the guys that you want to bank on giving you depth options, whereas, okay, our top guys have, been pitching a couple days and there's a tie game in the 6th inning and our starter is battling but kind of needs to be taken out. We need someone to just hold this game close while the offense breaks it open, and then maybe we can go to those leverage guys if we need to. Or in a tight spot, if you go to extra innings, you're like, okay, well, we've run through our closer, we've run through our setup man, we've run our 7th inning guy is pitched in 3 straight days, he absolutely cannot pitch. So we need somebody to come pitch in this at least high leverage situation, not the ideal guy, but someone who can come in and do a job. Guys like Jacob Webb, Robert Garcia, Shawn Armstrong, Hoby Milner, those are guys that I feel pretty comfortable in doing that. And now you push down Jacob Latz to probably the 5th highest leverage reliever in your bullpen. Feel much better about him in that kind of a situation. Daniel Robert and Matt Festa as your B-side, 6th, 7th inning guys. I feel decent about those guys in that role. Would still rather have a couple more guys. You look at the top end options, Robert Garcia, if that's your closer, I honestly feel pretty solid about that. Not ideal, would rather have, a more reliable option, a more, polished option like a Kirby Yates, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But if this is the pen that the Rangers go into camp with, it's much, much better than they left the season, they entered the offseason with, but it's still not quite good enough. But you look at the middle end of that bullpen. You got Jacob Webb, you got Garcia, you got Armstrong, Milner, also Shawn Armstrong, who they literally just signed. That's a really, really solid middle of your pen. Maybe a really good middle of your pen. But I really like what Chris Young has done this offseason in adding these guys, in adding this kind of value at this price, and still having some room to budge on, room to spend on somebody at the elite back end, like Kirby Yates, like maybe a Chris Martin, maybe even the Rangers throw John Gray back there. Coming up, we're going to look at what the Rangers have to do the rest of this offseason if Kirby Yates is going to come back to Texas. And what are they going to do if they don't bring Kirby Yates back to Texas? All that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You got all kinds of NFL action, college football action, NHL, NBA, right? Shout out to the Everydayers making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Monday, I will be back and talking about whatever the heck happens this weekend. Full disclosure, this is my second time recording this segment because I just started yapping without hitting keep recording on the second segment. So this is, maybe my points will be more salient, but you should have heard the stuff I was saying when absolutely nobody was listening to me. Anyway, getting back into the heart of the subject, the Rangers had a meeting with Roki Sasaki. One of the most important things the Rangers can do the rest of this offseason, probably the most important, the best thing they could do for the rest of this offseason is signing Roki Sasaki. The Rangers were one of 3 teams to have confirmed having a meeting with the Japanese right-handed future / maybe even current ace. He has been posted. He will be coming to Major League Baseball. He is so young, so freaking good. The only other teams to have a meeting with him confirmed right now are the Yankees and the Mets. Another team that was trying to have a meeting with him was the Philadelphia Phillies. And their, I believe, executive vice president, maybe POBO, whatever actual title Dave Dombrowski has with Philadelphia, he said, yeah, we'd like to have a meeting with Roki Sasaki, but we haven't. We have not been invited to have a meeting with Roki. I like that the Rangers are, a smaller market team than New York. It's pretty much everybody at this point, and Roki's agent has said many things about what Roki would like. There's a lot of speculation that he would like to be on the West Coast because that was kind of always assumed as the default option for Japanese players because, well, it's technically closer to Japan. Really doesn't feel all that much closer. It is rather than the West Coast, but given Texas, it's not all that much of a difference. You can find international flights to Japan from DFW. You can also probably find them from New York or most major cities at this point. So he said that's not as much of an option. He said that being in a smaller media market is something that might be helpful for him. He didn't love how he was treated by the Japanese media when he was talking about leaving. I mean, he just felt like he was really not treated well. And I don't know how much you know about the New York media scene, but it is not exactly the most inviting bunch of folks. Not exactly the kindest, most supportive media environment. Not exactly small in terms of the media contingent that will go to Yankees games or even Mets games. I wonder how the distribution is going to be different, how many people more are covering the Mets this year than they were in years past with the Juan Soto signing and all of that goes along with that. He would also have Kodai Senga on his team if he went to the Mets. The Yankees have had several very, very good Japanese players in their history. Hideki Matsui. There have been others more recently, like Masahiro Tanaka was a really, really good Japanese player who pitched for the Yankees for several seasons and had quite a bit of success. But the Rangers, so far, the smallest market team there. I don't know if the Dodgers have been confirmed to have a meeting with Sasaki. That was the favored landing spot. But again, with the Dodgers signing Blake Snell and also probably bringing back Clayton Kershaw and also having Tyler Glasnow and also having about 17 other different starters, including Shohei Ohtani, who will pitch at some point next year, maybe the beginning of the year. I think probably he'll pitch most of the season. They also have Yoshinobu Yamamoto in their rotation, who is very, very good. And also the Padres, another presumptive favorite, probably the second favorite heading into this offseason. Before any comments were made about what Roki actually wanted, it was assumed that he wanted to possibly play with his mentor Yu Darvish, another Japanese player who is very, very good, former Ranger great. Or maybe Yu Darvish can say, hey, I had a lot of success in Texas, and maybe they'll be nicer to you than they were to me, and not talk about you having ace stuff but not being an ace and shut down innings and all the nonsense that went along with Yu Darvish in his first time here. And I really still think that he wasn't quite appreciated, but Darvish did have a lot of success in Texas. It didn't end in the best way possible. I really wish that Willie Calhoun would have been more of a hitting monster so we could look back on Yu's time in Texas a little more fondly, but alas, that is neither here nor there. That would be the best thing the Rangers could do for the rest of this offseason is sign Roki Sasaki, but that's not happening for another 3 weeks or so. January 15th is the time when the deadline for the new year for the signing pool bonus for international signing pool bonus shifts over. So basically, he can get much more money. Not that it's really about that at this point, because he is going to be signing as an international amateur free agent, rather than a full-on free agent after being posted after being 25, and where he could probably make, I don't know, at least $350, maybe $400 million if Yoshinobu Yamamoto made $325 when he came over. Yeah, the ceiling is much, much higher on Roki Sasaki than it was on Yoshinobu Yamamoto, but this would be an A+ for the Rangers offseason if they signed Roki Sasaki. No question about it. They would have to shift up their rotation a little bit. Right now, Fangraphs Roster Resource has the Rangers rotation. For some reason, Nathan Eovaldi is starting pitcher number 1 as opposed to Jacob Degrom. I don't really know what the thought process is in that, other than maybe expecting Eovaldi to throw more innings than DeGrom. But anyway, the rest of the rotation with John Gray listed as the 3, Tyler Mahle listed as the 4, Cody Bradford listed as the 5, but Kumar Rocker not in there. If Roki Sasaki was plugged into this rotation, I think he immediately slots into your number 3, behind Eovaldi, behind DeGrom, ahead of John Gray, Tyler Mahle, Cody Bradford, even Kumar Rocker. And then you have some musical chairs with what you want to do with the rest of this rotation. Do the Rangers just simply add Roki and go with a 6-man rotation? I think that's possible. Maybe you get a healthier season from DeGrom, from Eovaldi, who are both in their mid-30s. Jacob DeGrom is 36.5 at this point. Nathan Eovaldi is not much shy of his 35th birthday. John Gray just turned 33. Tyler Mahle is 30, but again, this is going to be his first full season coming back from Tommy John surgery. He only pitched in 3 games last year and then went right back on the IL with shoulder soreness. Thankfully that didn't morph into anything worse, but he hasn't had the longest track record of durability in his career. Really only one fully healthy season where he gave over 180 innings, Tyler Mahle that is. And I don't know how much you can bank on that. Yeah, actually, it was exactly at 180 innings. Outside of that, the next most he's had in his career was 2019 when he pitched 1 out shy of 130 innings. So this is not exactly a guy who's going to eat a whole bunch of bulk innings. The Rangers, I don't think, are sure how many innings they're going to get out of Mahle, well, you never really know how many innings you're going to get out of just about anybody, because pitchers are so finicky. It is so hard to keep any pitcher healthy, let alone a starting pitcher, let alone one that is on the older side or coming off of Tommy John recovery. But again, adding Roki Sasaki to this rotation, no matter what the Rangers do with the back end of their bullpen, even if they don't add anyone to the back end of this bullpen, which I don't think will be the case, if you add Roki in there and your number 5 starter is John Gray, or maybe it's Tyler Mahle, or maybe it's Cody Bradford, I mean, that is a really darn good rotation. You go game 1, Jacob DeGrom, game 2, Nathan Eovaldi, game 3, Roki Sasaki, and then game 4 is some combination of maybe it's Kumar Rocker, maybe it's Tyler Mahle, maybe it's Cody Bradford, maybe it's John Gray. If those are your options for a game 4, Again, assuming you even get to the playoffs, assuming that everybody in your rotation is healthy come October, which are two rather medium-sized assumptions. Maybe the latter is a rather large assumption. That is a really darn good place to be, and whichever one of those guys, again, assuming that everybody or most everybody is healthy once you get to October, whichever one of the guys that I just mentioned that isn't starting Game 4, whether that's Malley, Gray, Bradford, or Rocker, whichever one of those guys isn't in your rotation, they're all thrown to the bullpen, and suddenly that bullpen looks absolutely disgustingly good and much more trustworthy than what the Rangers had heading into October in 2023, although it ended up not mattering, and everybody in that pen that was put in high leverage situations ended up having the best month of their lives. Maybe that happens again. Maybe it doesn't happen again. But either way, if the Rangers sign Hiroki Sasaki, that is an A++ offseason. Bringing back Nathan Eovaldi, bringing in Jake Berger, Jock Peterson, making these moves to fortify the middle to back end of your bullpen. That is a really, really good offseason. But the Rangers aren't done this offseason. There's still more left to do, including filling out the back end of this pen. Coming up, we're going to look at what it might cost to bring back Kirby Yates and who else the Rangers might get for the back end of their pen if they aren't able to bring back Kirby Yates. Talk about all that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. And by the way, it's the perfect gift. Gametime now has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of ticket sites. You've got all-in pricing, and toggling this feature shows you the total upfront, no surprise fees at checkout, so you know exactly what you're going to pay. You've also got panoramic views in your seat, so you can know what your seat's going to look like before you buy. They've also got the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Okay, here we are. I actually hit record this time on this segment. Doing great. Only done, 1,200 episodes of this podcast. Now let's look at the back end of this Rangers bullpen. Right now, if the season started today, if the Rangers made no more moves to fortify this bullpen, FanGraphs Roster Resource has the Rangers closers. They have two closers. At this point, they have Jacob Webb listed as one of the Rangers' closing options and Robert Garcia as the other. Now, if the Rangers started the season today, I think that Robert Garcia would be the Rangers' top option at closer. If you're looking at me like I'm an insane person who's thinking, why does a guy with a 4.22 ERA automatically get the job as the Rangers closer? I don't think it'd be automatic, but go look at his Baseball Savant page and you will see how red it is, how much better than those stats he actually is, how one bad month can really completely ruin a reliever's ERA for an entire season. Go look at his strikeout rate. Go look at how he limits walks and hard contact, how he also has a great changeup, so he's great against righties and lefties as a left-handed pitcher, and you'll see why, okay, I kind of see what Bryce is seeing in that guy. But I would rather the Rangers not start the season with Robert Garcia as their closer, unless he comes into spring training and looks absolutely unreal and he ends up winning the job that way. But defaulting into it with what the Rangers have right now in their pen, I don't think is ideal. The Rangers, it seems like, would like to add 2 more high leverage relief arms, and I think that they would ideally want those arms to be attached to Kirby Yates and Chris Martin, 2 former Ranger greats, one of them a little greater than the other. But the Arlington native and 6'8" tall Chris Martin, another tall Chris Rangers pitcher, maybe to have someone who also towers over other people and makes Chris Young look a little bit less insanely tall. Not that that's really particularly possible, but 2 DFW natives Chris Martin and Chris Young. Chris Martin pitched with the Rangers back in, I believe it was 2019, and was solid. The last 2 years, he has been absolutely fantastic with the Boston Red Sox. In 2023, he was the Boston Red Sox setup man, pitched into 55 games, ended up with only 3 saves on the year, 51 1/3 innings, and a 1.05 ERA. This guy was downright unhittable that year. I mean, he led baseball in chase rate, average exit velocity, was way up there in expected. ERA was way up there in terms of his hard hit rate, his barrel rate. Unfortunately, he did not have enough innings to qualify among the league leaders. Otherwise, he would be, leading the league in chase percentage, average exit velocity, and I believe also barrel percentage. He walked 4% of hitters in 2023, and this year somehow he got even better. He has always been a guy who has limited hard contact. He has always been a guy who has gotten decent strikeout numbers and has really, really limited the walks. This year, he was just straight up unreal. The fact that he, was elite in chase rate, elite at getting guys to expand the zone, but also didn't walk anybody. A 1.7% walk rate. That's insane. The Major League Baseball walk rate for average people, for normal people, 8.4%. He walked 1.7% of batters last year. Also incredible at barrel rate. He had a slightly worse year this year, a 3.5-ish ERA, 3.45 in 45 games. Did have a higher strikeout rate this year. Is, on the older side for sure. He's 38 years old. I don't think he's going to get a massive deal. And having 2 guys in the back end of your pen in Kirby Yates and David Robertson. No, and Chris Martin. It's a little risky. I think he's going to be going into his age 39 season because he turns 39 in June 2nd. So a little bit on the older side as well as Kirby Yates. But both those guys, I think the Rangers do have the financial means to get both of those guys and stay under the luxury tax. Right now, it seems like they're around $223 million committed to the 2025 payroll. The 2025 CBT limit is $241 million. So that's, $18 million. So the Rangers have $18 million left to spend on this roster. And the only places to really improve, maybe you could go get another bat if you're feeling really anti-Evan Carter or Adolis Garcia. If you think there's no way the Rangers can trust those guys to be good, then fine, go do that. And you don't trust Josh Smith or Zeke Duran or Leo Taveras as replacements, fine. I don't see a scenario where the Rangers sign another bat this offseason at all. I don't see it, unless it's somebody to a minor league deal with a major league camp invite. But again, that's $17 million to spend on the rest of this pen. Kirby Yates, I've seen projected for $14, maybe $15 million that he will make this year. I think that is maybe that's around what he'll make. Maybe he'll end up making more, but you look at the relievers and what they've made this offseason. I mean, the highest paid average annual value for any relief pitcher signed this year was Clay Holmes at $12.66667 million for a 3-year deal. 3 years, $38 million. But he's going to start for the Mets. So you kind of throw that out. That's not reliever money. That's back-end starter money. Then you look at Blake Trinan, 2 years, $22 million, $11 million average annual value. I mean, Aroldis Chapman is making $10.75 million with Boston this year. I would expect that Chris Martin maybe he makes that much, maybe he makes less. I'm honestly not entirely sure what that market for him will be. I do know that Kirby Yates will be making more than $11 million this year. That is kind of the floor for him. Maybe he gets a 2-year deal. Maybe he gets exactly that Blake Trinan deal and goes for multiple years as opposed to higher average annual value and trying to go and repeat what he did last year again and then signing another deal worth $14, $15 million. Maybe he says, I'm not entirely sure that last year is just me being back to normal. I'd rather have the security of multiple years since I am very much on the older side, and that he is going to be heading into his age 38 season next year and saying, okay, I know for sure I can get a multi-year deal with at least $10 million average annual value. I don't see a scenario where you give a 37-year-old heading into his age 38 season 3 years, especially with Kirby Yates' track record and injury history. Even though he has been amazing and was one of the best relievers in all of baseball last year, I just don't see a scenario where he gets 3 years. But say you give Kirby Yates exactly that deal that Blake Treinen got in 2 years, $22 million, so $11 million per year. Then that gives you, I believe, if my math was correct, let's see, where did we go? $223 million that the Rangers have already committed. That's $18 million. So say $7 million to give to your eighth inning guy, if that's Chris Martin. Maybe that's what he's making. Maybe that's what he ends up making. I'm honestly not entirely sure. I know that would definitely keep the Rangers out of the David Robertson sweepstakes. It seems like the Rangers might already be out on him. I mean, Chris Martin last year made $6.75 million. I think maybe that's a reasonable bar. So say $11 million for Kirby, or say he goes down 2 years, $20 million. Say he doesn't quite get Blake Treinen money, and he goes to that. So you're getting $10 million a year. Say you give $7 million to Chris Martin for his age 39 season. Then you have a whole $1 million to play with. Maybe if the Rangers want to really clear up some space, they can move on from Jon Gray, try and ship him off somewhere else, and hope that somebody else needs some rotation depth and is willing to pay the $13-ish million that Jon Gray is going to be making this year. I think it'll cost a little bit more on the CBT. Yeah, he's making $13 million. It's counts $14 million against the luxury tax because it was a 4-year deal that he signed. That was an average annual value of $14 million, so he's making more in years past. Or if you want to get creative, and I think the Rangers might just want to do so, if you get priced out of Kirby Yates, you go with Chris Martin as your closer, and then you move Jon Gray to the bullpen, where if you're already paying him $13 million and you're not quite sure if he's going to give you reliable starter innings, you know that he could be a dynamite reliever. I think that might make the most sense for how the Rangers finish out the rest of this offseason and the moves that they make. Say, all right, Jon Gray, we're going to throw you in the pen. Yeah, I know you'd rather be starting, but we know that you could be absolutely dominant in the back end of this pen. You have your ninth inning guy as Kirby Yates or Chris Martin, whichever one of those the Rangers go with. Then you have your eighth inning guy as Jon Gray, who can also give you multiple innings, who, can be a dynamite, I think, strikeout machine, an absolutely unhittable relief ace, like we saw in Game 3 of the World Series, like we saw in Game 1 of the World Series back in 2023, and like we saw even at times last year when he came out of the pen. He looked absolutely unhittable. I think that might be the smartest move for the Rangers. Then you move up Tyler Mahle into the 3 spot in your rotation, even if you don't sign Rogie. If you do sign Rogie, then you definitely, I think, would be best using your dollars and your assets to move Jon Gray to the pen. Even if they don't, I still think that would be the best use of Jon Gray. I think he would be most effective and most help this team win in that kind of a high leverage relief role. But no matter what, the Rangers so far have done a really good job. They've still got some work left to do. I like the Shawn Armstrong signing. I can't wait to find out more news about Rogie and who he starts narrowing teams down to. Like I think we'll find out in the next coming weeks. And who knows what the heck the Rangers are going to do with the back end of this pen, but I am feeling much better about this offseason so far with another smart signing in Shawn Armstrong. We'll be back next week to talk more about what the heck happens, or maybe Chris Young has already made a signing while I've been recording this and not checking updates on Twitter. Who knows? But until next time, thank y'all so much for listening, subscribing, and don't forget to enjoy baseball.